Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Optometry Money Podcast, where I'm helping ODs nationwide make better and better decisions around your money, your career, and your practices. I am your host, Evon Mendrin, certified financial planner and owner of Optometry Wealth Advisors. Thank you so much for listening once again. And in today's episode, we have another great guest, Perry Brill. Perry has several years working as a general manager in a super successful private practice. He's super familiar with all things operations and optical in private practices. He's got a lot of experience and just great insights into technology and marketing. And those are all some things we talk about. We talk about bottlenecks in practices. We talk about different technology that practices should look at adopting and should not. We talk about marketing. We talk about outsourcing. So I think this is going to be an interesting episode to hear Perry's perspective. And obviously, I'm not an optometrist. I've never worked in a practice. I'm not a practice management consultant. So I look at a lot of these things from the financial lens of the practice and from the optometrist. And so you don't have to go very far to find the limits of how much I know about the inner workings and operations of a private practice. But what I do know is that the financial health of a private practice is influenced and affected by how well and how efficiently that machine is running. That is, how well the procedures are documented and followed, how well all the systems work together, how well the people are working together, and how well the technology factors into that whole patient experience. So I know how important operations and technology and even marketing are to the financial health of a practice. And so I wanted to get Perry's perspective on all of that. And there are a few blunders right at the very beginning of the interview. So if you can work your way through those blunders and keep listening, I think you'll get something out of it. And it's just proof that, yes, I'm human and sometimes making content is hard. So if you have any questions on or just are curious to know about how I or Optometry Wealth Advisors serves optometrists nationwide with their financial planning, head over to my website, optometrywealth.com. And feel free to schedule an introduction call just to get a chance to chat with me and learn about what's on your mind and see if we can be a resource for you. So without further ado, here is my interview with Perry Brill. Welcome back to the Optometry Money Podcast. I am your host, Evon Mendrin. Thank you so much for listening. In today's episode, we have another awesome guest. I'm super excited to welcome to the show Perry Brill. Perry is the CEO of Entrepreneur Media. He runs the Entrepreneur Facebook group, the host of Optical Obsessed Live weekly talk show, co-founder of I Help You, a remote staffing service. He's got years of experience as general manager of a super successful private practice. He's making incredible content all over the internet. He is the man, the myth, and the legend. Perry, thank you so much for having me on. Whoops, that's not quite right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh yeah. You're welcome on my podcast too. So we can interchange those words there.
Got it. Yeah, I got to get all these mistakes out early on, and we'll just we'll work some editing magic to it. But yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. I think there's so much that practice owners can learn from this conversation, whether they're cold starting, just opening doors, or some that's more established, because you have that experience managing the operations in a practice, and you've got so much experience in marketing and content creation. You've got so many good thoughts on the future of marketing and technology in private practice. So I think there's so much to learn here. But for those people who don't know who you are, can you just give us a brief background about your experience and what you're up to now?
Sure. So I grew up in Shawnee, Kansas, a nice suburb about 15 minutes outside of Kansas City. And it was a really good childhood. And, as you're growing up, sometimes you don't really know what your parents do for a living. What did your mom or dad do for a living, Evon?
My dad owned an insurance agency, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom.
Okay. So my dad's an optometrist, and you're like, Dad, why are you, you're like 8 years old. You want your mommy and daddy to come home and, feed you chicken nuggets and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, Dad, why are you cutting home so late? My parents would come home at 8, 9, 10 p.m. And, I have a brother. He's 2 years older than me. So, at 8 and 10, we were good to stay home. We're fine. a little safer during the 90s too, no crazies, no cell phone GPS trackers.
Yep.
And not really until high school did I realize, wow, they're like running a practice, like a very successful practice. And, I would go into the office, play around, of course I had eye exams. I was a high myope since I got my first pair of glasses in kindergarten. And I remember I threw them in my backpack. They're these round, ugly things. And now they'd be hip though. They'd be cool now. But back then they had dolphins on the side. I mean, it was bad. But that was kind of my first minor entrance into eye care without even realizing it. So fast forward a bit, I went to the University of Kansas. I studied environmental science. I didn't really like college. It was more of like, hey, white collar kid, you're going to college, dad's educated, mom's educated, go to college.
Yep.
So I ended up getting an optical job sophomore year. And I did it really for beer money, fun, just boredom. I loved it. Day one, I was like, damn, this is so cool. Like I loved fashion already. I was always into fashion and clothes. Not like name brand or anything though. Like just, I want cool clothes. I'd go thrifting because that's really all I could afford in high school and stuff. And I had an obsession with it. I would just go home. I'd go, and I was very well trained by this practice. They were called Lawrence Family Vision Clinic. And I came in on Saturdays and they had like team training. So that's how I really got my start. And then I would go home, I'd study it, read it. And from there, finished up my degree, did that whole thing. I worked for my dad for 8 years in a private practice in Mission, Kansas, just about 10 minutes, from where I grew up. Worked there for 8 years. And I pretty much got an MBA in eye care, if that was a degree. Mm-hmm. And what I realized was this is a fantastic profession. There's so much upward mobility. You obviously have to work for it. And I learned a skill set of being really a practice administrator, office manager, operations, IT, chief heart officer, actually caring about people. So that's really the skill set that I came away with.
Got it. Yeah. And that's always interesting about being involved in a small to medium-sized business is you're sort of involved in all these different parts of it. You get a hands-on experience and really getting your hands dirty in all these different parts of the business. And did your experience as a kid, like finding out what your dad did that help or deter you from getting into eye care? Like what was that like at the time?
It had no effect. There was no correlation or anything. Okay. But I think the one thing that came from it, and I don't know if this is just like me being innately entrepreneurially skilled, or I'm not going to say I'm skilled, but I had this entrepreneurship tendency, as we all do. We're like, maybe I want to sell baked goods or whatever it is. But I did the lemonade stand. At 14, I started a business. I'm going to call it a business. It wasn't profitable per se, but it was called Curb Masters. And I painted addresses on curbs of houses. So, emergency vehicles and stuff could, spot the house on the curb. And I spray painted it. I put flyers up. I actually sent an email blast out to the HOA, Homeowners Association. Uh-huh. I scraped the directory. They still had flip directories of the neighborhood, with emails, names, and addresses. I scraped that, got into Gmail, sent like an email blast out for 400 people. And the president of the HOA was like, Perry, dude, you can't do that. That's like breaking all the rules.
At 14, you're building an email marketing empire, huh?
Yeah, it didn't last long. I probably made a couple $1,000 in that business, but it was fun.
Awesome. And what was so from when you think about when you first got started working with your dad to 8 years later, you exit, like what was the growth of the practice? What did you see in that practice from a growth standpoint from beginning to 8 years later? What was that like?
So to give a little framework, 7,000 square foot office, eight exam rooms. The optical probably made up a fourth of the practice in terms of size. Now revenue, statistically speaking, opticals are probably 50% or more of practice. And growth wise, so my dad's had many associates over the years. Could have one at a time, could have three at a time. He never had another partner, just, things never panned out that way, or who knows what. That was all his decisions. I was not involved in it during the day-to-day of that. And I would say the growth was, linear to the market and inflation. So I wouldn't say we had explosive growth because the 8 years I worked there, we had some associates in and out, but it was mainly, I would say, one doctor practice doing well over $1 million.
Wow.
And so when you're a one doctor practice, especially in the Midwest, remember, we're in the Midwest. This is not California, New York. So income levels are lower. People are not fancy per se. I mean, people are still buying nice things, but they're not obsessed with, health and fashion at all. I mean, just look at the diabetic rate in the Midwest. It's nuts. And that kind of goes into the success of the practice. When you practice in a less affluent area, you end up with more disease. And in return, that creates wealth for a practice because you have this annuity and these people coming back and back and back because they have glaucoma, disease. You have minority populations who are generally have more diseased eyeballs.
So that's,
but the growth trajectory was, it was always steady. It was not like crazy. We were 33 years in when I joined this practice, and how much more are you going to grow?
Yeah. So that's interesting. The demographics just created some demand just based on the health of the group of people that lived in that area. And I would assume that there are a lot of owners that would say, one practitioner, $1 million, like that's rare. Like, is that really something most single practice owners can strive for? Like, what does it take for a single practitioner practice to get to that million mark and to have that level of success?
Sure. I mean, what do you experience? You're into the wealth part. I'm sure you see people's finances, perhaps, which is a very personal thing. Shouldn't be faux pas. Yeah. What do you see for a one doctor revenue generally? Because I really don't have access to those stats, but I have a number in my head. I want to see if we're on the same page.
Yeah, I mean, anywhere from 600 to 800s probably. I personally haven't seen the million mark yet.
Okay. I was going to predict like 600. What was it? I would say it's the breadth of the services that were provided that made the practice successful. We were not narrow and deep. You have practices today that are like, I do ortho-K. I do glaucoma. I do dry eye. And my dad, Dr. Brill, I do it all, and I do it really well because I'm competent. I'm capable. I can do it. I hired staff. I delegate. I bought the equipment. I took the risk. I made the investment, and really that's what it's about. So, I just want the audience to know is like, you can do it all. You can. It's just, are you willing to sacrifice the hours and the repetition to learn that? Just before we're on this podcast, Evon, we're talking about editing a podcast. Believe it or not, we're both podcasters, and we edit our own podcast. Sometimes I pay to have it edited. Depends on my time constraints, but we become better over time.
Yeah. Yep.
So.
Yeah, and I've heard you say on other interviews you've done that businesses have systems and systems run the business. And I would imagine in a single practitioner practice, systems and processes and having things standardized is really important. Like, what does that mean? How important are systems and documented processes to a practice?
Yeah, so let's go through. First of all, I want to cover documentation. Earlier, I didn't realize it until this year. I need documentation. Okay. I need it for my own business even. And I probably should have had it when I was working for my dad. I just did not develop that skill set. I think it was more of peer-to-peer training. And that was my form of documentation, was just being present. And that is a form of documentation, but it doesn't provide repeatability and consistency. So I'm just going to throw out a tool. I use a tool called Tango. And there's also one called Scribe How, I believe. And you're able to document processes. So let's define a process. Hiring is a struggle right now. And I want to train someone to submit VSP exams and contact lens orders because we can't collect the revenue until we submit those claims. And delaying and getting paid is huge in healthcare because it's a convoluted process to submit things. And if I could get that revenue in my account 3 weeks earlier, that may be very helpful for cash flow, like really helpful. Yeah. So like this software allows you to record a screen. It documents where you clicked. It has, AI, or it scrapes the screen to see what text is on the screen and it auto documents things. And so we can use tools to document really simple processes where in the past we would have to manually teach people things. And this is how you scale businesses, is really through that documentation and training. So that's one form of developing a system and process to replicate it with staff as you grow.
Got it. Yeah. And you hear about standard operating procedures as if it's like this giant binder of written out notes. And I'm sure for like a lot of people it's just this giant book of printed out pages, but using technology allows you to do that a lot more easier. So you're not going to have to do the dreaded sitting down and like typing out this whole giant procedure, but you can do that a lot easier. You can share these videos across the whole business, and everyone can see you do it live instead of having to guess what all that text means. So that's pretty cool.
Like Loom your life. I mean, like the tool Loom, the little thing we all do, like, stop sending emails of how to do something within your practice. Like record a video, click here, or hey, this is the products we use, or you screwed up this invoice, you used the wrong billing code. Like just record a video, store that in Google Drive, or within Loom, they have their own folder system. Like it could be really basic how you record stuff in your practice of how-tos.
Loom is incredible. If you haven't started using Loom, please start using it, because it's a great way to send videos by email, quick videos, short videos. It's a really awesome tool. And all the tools Perry mentioned, I'll throw into the show notes. But when you think about systems and you think about your experience in the operations of a practice, like what are some of the biggest bottlenecks that you've seen in practices that lead to either a drag on profitability or sort of just constrain the potential of a practice? Like what have you seen that can be improved?
Right. So let's get back to the basics of how we communicate with patients. They do not want phone calls, so I want to establish that. If you do not have an online scheduler today, it is your number one thing that's limiting your revenue. Number one.
Yep.
I know it sounds really simple, but I want to book online. I book my haircuts online. I book my airline tickets. We do everything. And it needs to be a real-time scheduler. It cannot be an appointment request, because if I can't book, I'm going to go to the next website and the next website till I find someone I can book with. And very similarly, it's so convenient today to get on websites and use live chat. I'm about to cancel my cable bill, or I have internet and cable combined. And is it called cable? What do we call TV today? Whatever, TV.
Yep.
I'm about to cancel it because I never watch it except when like some sports are playing.
Yeah.
So I just switched to YouTube TV, and I'm going to get on there and I'm going to live chat them. So these modern forms of communication are revenue increasers. So number one, increase your digital infrastructure. And it's going to cost you money. It's not an expense. Your online scheduler may cost you $100 to $200 per month, but just realize one patient, you paid it off. That's it. One patient a month.
Yeah, I've seen this in my business. And again, like anytime I want to interact with a service, I'm going to the chat, or I'm using a scheduling tool. Like I don't want to have to pick up the phone to have to call someone. And it's really all about lowering friction in that patient experience. Like, how do you make that whole experience from them visiting your website to scheduling a time to getting in to see you? How do you make that as smooth as possible and remove as much friction as possible?
That's it. And what I do is, whoever your electronic health record system is, go to their integrated partners on their website, start there. Go see who has a scheduler that's connected. And step two, ask that integrated partner, is it a live scheduler or does it require an appointment request? If it's an appointment request, throw it in the garbage, move on to a different company, because then you have to have a human inside the office accepting those appointment requests. And before there's going to be a lot of people listening to this, like, well, I'm a little scared that so a patient's going to book in the wrong time slot. And I'm like, don't worry about that stuff. Just be happy that someone booked. Later on, you secured the slot. You can always text them like, hey, can we move that up 15 minutes or, something like that.
Yeah, got it. What else?
Yeah, so I want to go through these other bottlenecks. So one is the doctor needs to be in the lane, not doing the minutia of the practice. So this goes back to payroll is huge. Payroll is very sophisticated, very automated, and you should always be updating your systems and software to run your business. So when I was my dad's practice, we used something called Time Clock Plus, I believe it was called. and we had a fingerprint system for clocking in. And that was pretty advanced, 15 years ago. It wasn't like this manual punch in. I like something called Deputy, or there's one called Home Base. You can use geolocation too, so people can't clock in before they get to work. So, they have to be within like 250 feet of your building to clock in remotely from their phone. So that's really cool. And you can start monitoring your business and trends. And, I'm not a micromanager, but did someone show late? Let's see that on a pie chart. So payroll should be about 3 clicks. Everybody clocks in. Maybe you skim through payroll every week to see that nobody worked overtime. Because if you're having people working overtime, it means 2 things. One is you're understaffed, or 2, the team members you have are not getting their work done in time and they're lacking in performance. And like those are like total red flags in a practice of something's about to blow up when someone's hitting that 42-hour mark. Like, why?
Yeah, interesting. Okay. Yeah, what else have you seen in terms of a bottleneck?
Well, let's go to scribing. And so these are all the places. You can have a remote scribe. You can have a scribe in the office. And there is this notion that a doctor can type really fast. Because I'm sure you and I, we type like wizards. We learned it. We're at that age where it's like really important to type, right? Yep. And I see my dad's an okay typist, but it's still kind of like a little fumbled. It's not speed demon. So a scribe, the purpose is, let's get proper documentation. But we know EHRs are trash. EHRs are not meant to increase the quality of care for a patient. That's not what they're meant for at all. An EHR is meant for so the insurance company can audit you and make you pay a bunch of money because you had the wrong diagnosis code and collected money. In an ideal world, we would, and this is actually, I'm going to credit this to Dr. Ryan Gustis, who owns LensQuote. He says, why aren't we video recording exams? Get rid of the EHR, just record the whole exam on video and audio and transcribe it. If we ever want to go back and get some history, just because we're audited or maybe just something came up, let's go watch the video. I was like, genius.
Are there any concerns about privacy or what would go into that to make sure you're doing that appropriately?
Yeah, it'd have to be done through a HIPAA compliant encrypted platform, whatever the tech specs out there. And we'll talk about this later on, but I've seen this that, AI is soon to be able to listen to our exams, and it's going to take that data where when we say patient has a pressure of 32 in the left right eye and 19 in the left eye, I think the voice is going to recognize it and it's going to stick it in the right fields in our electronic health system. So that's something that we can look forward to. And the reason you have a scribe is better patient care. Get that emotion, look the patient directly in the face and have that relationship. When you're clacking away at the keyboard, it really sets a bad tone that they don't know what you're doing. They really don't know what you're typing in. They're unsure. And it's kind of anxiety inducing almost.
Yeah. So the perception maybe from the patient is like you've got the clipboard and you're sort of like writing mysterious notes about them, or maybe you're just not even paying attention to them that well. You're working on something else. Is that something that's a concern?
Yeah, it's almost like the more notes you're typing, the sicklier they are or something.
Interesting. Yeah. That's
kind of how I perceive it. But what a scribe allows you to do is, let's go to the physical part of it as well. Internal scribe, they'll go through the tech process, do auto refraction, optomap, neurolens, whatever your protocol is at the beginning, get acuities, and then the patient's ready. That scribe is going to notify the doctor, the patient's ready. That scribe is going to be in the exam room the whole time typing. And if you need technical setup, there's plenty of colleagues out there, myself, who can help you with the technical setup of, how to use a scribe, And then they can grab your trial contact lenses. So that's a huge benefit. Imagine not having to make 3 or 4 trips to the trial contact lens room. And this all goes back to, I'm going to call it like keystrokes. It's why we use 2 computer monitors, or when we had our flip phones, we used T9. So this is reducing footsteps in the practice, where if you track those minutes, you may have spent 4 minutes during that eye exam just walking around in the practice doing stupid stuff. and you multiply those 4 minutes by 20 patients a day, and now you spent an hour and a half just running errands in your own office when you could have seen 3 more patients. Yeah. And then you multiply those 3 more patients per day times 250 working days. Yeah. And you're like, wow, that was 250K I missed out on.
Yeah. It sounds like all this is to help elevate the doctor to be doing what is most valuable to the practice. And a lot of times that is seeing patients and being able to pass on these other duties to other people or to technology, and to allow the technology to handle a lot of these tasks for you.
Yeah. And I also want to mention that, look, sometimes patients have trouble talking to the doctor. They're scared, they're nervous. But if sometimes people is it the word maybe confide to the technician?
Interesting.
So like
interesting.
It's more trusting. Maybe it's because they're a different gender. Maybe it's because they're younger, but they'll say things like, don't tell the doctor this, or how they're really feeling. And that scribe is able to relay that information to the doctor, really to increase the efficiency of the exam.
Interesting. Very, very interesting.
And this is silly, but the scribe's role is also when that doctor gets in the exam room, you could have a 14-year-old daughter, and maybe the mom is 30. It's like, is that her sister or is that the daughter? So a lot of it is information collection as well that goes on. Sometimes patients have stenches, so it allows the doctor to be prepared for that. My dad would put cologne like on his lip. And then there's language things too that they can help with. So,
and you mentioned technology, and what do you see in terms of adoption of new technology in private practices? How quickly are private practices adding on new technology that's going to make their practices better and more efficient? Is the profession as a whole slow to pick up on new tools? Like what does that look like, and what should owners and doctors be adding to their practice in order to make their practices better, the patient experience better, and overall more profitable?
Well, first of all, do what you love. If you hate dry eye, you're going to hate dry eye. I mean, dry eye is super profitable. It's outside of optical, and probably scleral contact lenses, it's the most profitable. So let's break that down. Dry eye, the patients, I'm just going to say they suck. They complain a lot. And so that's you have to step back from your life and realize how miserable they are. And I have dry eye, and I don't complain about it because that's why I'm wearing glasses. But if I had contacts on right now, I would be complaining. They're dry, scratchy, itchy. So you have to be able to be compassionate and slow down in your practice and change the modality at which you operate. And crap, what were we talking about? I was talking about dry eye and
technology. What is
technology?
Yeah, what is the role of technology, and where do practices need to be adding on new tech and new tools to make them better?
Yeah. So today, you can't be mediocre. You have to be the best, because Google will tell you who's the best. And when I type in dry eye of what city are you in middle of California?
Fresno, California.
Fresno. When I type in dry eye, and let's just do it now. Let's do a fun search, because we're gonna talk marketing here anyway. So dry. And I have never searched this in mine, so my Google cache is clean.
Got it. Okay.
Dry eye, Fresno, California. Because you know how Google lays those
there
cookies.
are no tricks, listener. This is a clean search.
What should we type in? Dry eye expert, maybe?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay. We got health grades as number 1. And then we have a URL called, whoever these doctors are, maybe you're going to get some patients or referrals. Who knows? Dr. Recalled. FresnoDryEye.com. So maybe the URL perhaps prompted that.
Shout out to her.
Yep. Is that Margie? Maybe I'm just recognize the name. Margie. Oh my God. It totally is Margie. So we got Dr. Margie Recalled and Dr. Stacy Hamamoto. And okay, here it is. So we're talking technology. We've all heard the term IPL.
Yep.
It's huge, right? So what does she have? She's advertising right on her website. OptiLight IPL by Luminous. It's the newest, greatest, latest IPL machine out there. So I couldn't even plan this. She's the latest and greatest. And why she's showing up on page 1 of Google's second result after health grades. You're not going to beat health grades, but no one's going to health grades. So it just shows you that Google knows who the experts are by the equipment you carry, the copy on your website, and the way you practice. They just do. And typically the best providers are updating their websites. They have an understanding that they have to make information accessible, and the best practice are making that information accessible. In terms of other profitable sectors are, optical is technology. When we really think about it, innovation in eyewear is going to be like really crazy really soon. We saw the invention of Facebook and Ray-Ban came together, made those smart glasses. Now that was, it's not going to work out, and that's okay. We saw Google Glass. We've seen Snapchat come out with theirs. We saw Ray-Ban come out with theirs. I have a pair of smart glasses in my house currently. It's open ear audio glasses. So right now I have, Bluetooth wireless headphones in, but I could actually put my glasses on and be listening to talking to you on this podcast, through those. And we're going to see that a lot with eyewear. And something I came across last week is it's audio assistance. So instead of hearing aids, bye-bye, we're going to have eyewear that's going to provide vision, and it's going to provide audio assistance to people who are hearing impaired. And so audiology and eye care a long time have been very meshed and blended together, especially in the UK.
Interesting. And I know I believe I've seen you post on things like this, and I've seen tools like vision therapy tools that are purely virtually based. What is the future of practicing eye care? How does technology affect that? Are there going to be virtual refractions? Is virtual vision therapy a viable way to practice? Like what does that look like for the future of eye care?
Right. Yeah. We're going to have a hybrid model. And I think COVID obviously accelerated, what we do. And if you think about it, most doctors have been doing telemedicine for 10 years. It wasn't called telemedicine. It was called patient calls the emergency line because they have a stick in their eye and they're in pain. The patient would leave a voicemail on the practice's voicemail, and then the doctor would call the patient. The doctor would say, "Hey, take a picture of it, text it to me." That's telemedicine 10 years ago. It just wasn't called that. So because the doctor does not want to come in Saturday at 8 a.m. to take a stick out of the eye. They want to determine, is this acute? Do I need to come in? Does this person need to go to the emergency room? So what we're going to see is, if you have not bought into the virtual VR thing concept yet, consider it in the next 3 years, because you're going to need experience with it. So right now you can get a virtual visual field. I personally like All Eyes, mainly due to, I think the company's awesome. There's Hero, and there's some other ones out there, and they can do color vision testing, visual fields, and some other tests. Soon, they're going to have refraction in there. And what I imagine is these VR units are going to be mail order to people's houses, and we're going to be doing eye exams at home. Super awesome, super detailed. We can put a slit lamp in this stuff. We can do it all.
That sounds incredible, and I'm definitely not an optometrist. I'm really only, I can only speak as a consumer here, someone looking from the outside in. It sounds like these aren't things to be afraid of. These are ways to reach a next generation. These are ways to improve the client experience, and to get a new generation of patients into the practice. What have you seen is the general feel of all these different things, of the new technology coming into eye care? Like what's the general sense and opinion of the ODs that and the practices?
Okay, well, there's a concept of early adopters, and what you should know about early adopters is occasionally you get burned. And I'll give you an example, and there's probably people listening to this that will know these things. You had a company called Eyes On, and it was called it was from Optometry was the company name. They were based in California, actually. Really sick product. It solved chromatic aberrations, and patients would complain of like nighttime glare. Even the best anti-reflective coated lenses cannot solve all glare issues. So it had like a filter in it, or like a monomer that was embedded in the lens. And whether you think it's goofy science or not, people said it worked. And they sold thousands and thousands and thousands of lenses. Well, guess what? They went out of business 8 years later, maybe 5 years later. And so here people had this equipment, $20,000 machine.
Wow.
They've marketed, branded their practices to this technology. And then you're like, that block of business is dead.
Yeah.
It's like someone says, no, you can't fit contact lenses anymore. You're like, well, 25% of my practice is contact lenses. So you have to have some risk factor and be willing to take a loss.
Got it. Okay. So there's maybe some reason for a lot of ODs to maybe wait, not be early adopters, and to see what actually shakes out. Let's talk about.
I did want to
go ahead.
Yeah, I want to get into one other thing here. We were talking about virtual eye exams. I want to hit on the optical part too. What phone do you have? iPhone. What model?
12
X
12
or
Pro.
Something. Oh geez,
Yeah.
Can't keep up anymore. I'm an Android, and I guess people make fun of me for it, but I love it. At least it's not a BlackBerry, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so with iPhone, it has a 3D scanner in it. So I don't know if you've ever used it have you used that for anything?
I've not actually used that for anything.
Okay. Well, it's currently people are probably doing like stupid avatar stuff with it and stuff, right? But really where the use case in it is you can currently download an app. One's called Bellus, Bellus. Bellus is a 3D scanning company that they're an app company. They make some hardware too. You can scan your head. You'll almost get like a 360-degree view, or maybe like 270. It's going to map out every single nook and cranny of your face using whatever math they do. And we'll be able to make eyewear fit just for your face. And so what we're going to see, and it currently exists, we can do this. We can do eyewear designed specifically to you, your bridge. If you need a 132.5 temple length, we can produce that for you. If you're Asian and you need a built-up bridge, we can produce that for you. I think in the future here, in the next 5 years, we're going to see inventory go down in offices. It's going to free up cash flow, because if you look at eyewear, it's the biggest really expense for any practice. And it's like every frame, if you imagine it, is a $100 bill on the wall. That's what it is. And the patients and staff sometimes see it as artwork, but it's cash held up. And so if we could go to an inventory-less model or reduce inventory, that's where we should go. And with this technology, you're going to meet with a virtual optician, just like we're on our recording platform here over the internet. You're going to meet with an optician. You, Evon, are going to scan your face. I'm going to design it. You're going to say, hey, Perry, I want to look like Al Roker with his cool blue glasses. I have access to all these basically like wallpapers, and we'll design them in real time. It's going to be awesome.
That sounds awesome. So sort of like a just-in-time inventory system for all of the frames and stuff you got on the walls that are on the shelves. And like you said, cost of goods sold is definitely one of the larger expenses. On average, depending on what benchmark study you're looking at, it's going to be somewhere between 25 and 30% of gross collected revenue. And again, not an optometrist, not a practice consultant, but I'm always interested in seeing the different ways people handle inventory, whether it's new consignment models of inventory, where the manufacturer's taking on that risk, or whatever it is. So I think that's, we can do another 5-hour episode on just that. But let's talk about outsourcing. I've heard you talk about the importance of outsourcing, and what are some areas of a practice that you feel it makes sense to not keep in-house, but to pass on, or not keep on the doctor's shoulders, but to pass on to either another team member by bringing in someone else and hiring, or to pass on to someone else by outsourcing? What are those things that can be passed off of the doctor's shoulders?
Yeah. So I would do, first of all, pick the one or two things you hate the most
Got it.
and outsource those. And I'll give you an example. I'm not the best like cleaner, like in terms of like cleaning my house, like I got dust bunnies and stuff. I'm not gonna lie. So what did I do? I hired someone to clean every 2 weeks. Get those uncommon areas that just stack up over time, the windowsills and the blinds and stuff. And I realized that the quality of life I got by hiring the service, it made me feel better, and I could come home on the weekend and I felt good. And so you need to feel good working your practice, and you can't feel good if you have that ADHD. For you, it may be bookkeeping. So it could be revenue cycle management and with your insurance claim. So if I had to pick these areas that you should outsource, number one, go look at your insurance receivables list, pull that report, go back 180 days. And if you look at that list and you got $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 sitting there, you have issues in your office. So either the issue is you're not putting your payments in from the insurance companies. So those payments are coming in via EFT. Hopefully, well, please come in via EFT. If you're getting checks in your practice, call those companies, submit the paperwork. You need to outsource. And there's plenty of, it's called revenue cycle management. And they submit your claims. They scrub the claims, making sure diagnosis codes are all going to go through, and they're going to post your payments. Cash flow is king. So that's number one. Other areas of outsourcing. So I just launched a service called I Help You. It's super cheesy. And the reason I kind of came to this invention of services is I hired a virtual assistant for myself for my other business, Entrepreneur, and I produce a lot of media content and do marketing for B2B SaaS companies. And we're unconventional in that we penetrate communities like Entrepreneur and ODs on Finance and all that stuff. We really want to become part of communities, and that's how we market. And I needed someone for my business, but I could not afford an American worker because I'm just too small. I was a solopreneur at the time. So I hired someone from South Africa. His name was Nyari. Nyari had a college degree. He wanted to pursue a hip hop career. That didn't come to fruition. And he was working in a marketing company. So he had this skill set. He had this business acumen already. And I hired him at $15 an hour USD. And I basically got a $35 an hour employee for 15. But in his country, he was getting paid super well, more than he was making. And I came around, I was like, oh my God, I'm making impact in his life with higher wages. He's making impact in mine. This is awesome. And so we look at outsourcing as like this totally negative thing, But the truth is, Evon, your 22-year-old probably doesn't want to sit at the front desk. They don't want to be teching. They don't want to be in a cubicle. So let's appeal to people. People want to work. So that's kind of how I came up with the concept.
I think we're still getting used to, especially after COVID, like what can actually be done virtually and what has to be done on site in the office, in the clinic. I think we're all sort of thinking that through and getting used to that idea. But what do you see that most owners would think has to be done in clinic, needs to be done on site? What are those things that the perception is like that's got to be done on site in office versus what can actually be outsourced virtually? What are some of those things?
Yeah, so you're mentioning the control freaks, the control freak business owner. I'm one.
And
are you one, Evon?
It's
maybe
not even just control freaks. I don't think it's just we've been so used to doing things for so long a certain way, and we've been so used to doing things in person and on site, and we've got all those fixed costs and employee costs that come with that, and it's just sort of a new world that came with COVID, and now so much is done virtually.
Yeah, so let's define the role. So the number one role is anything that involves the front desk, answering phones, inbound, outbound patient communication via text message. So let's say somebody is requesting a prescription. They're going to Warby, they're going to Zenny, they're going to the boutique down the street. They want something super high end that you don't offer. Why are you paying your front desk $20 an hour to send an RX? Like that stuff can be done remotely. And the benefit of someone working remote is they're not distracted. They have nothing going on. There's no people coming in at the front desk, and then they're answering another call, and then they're going to the optical. They're sitting at home all day answering your phone. And if you're using a VoIP system, VoIP, and you're on Weave, Solution Reach, Vonage, Zoom Phone, whatever it is, they can tune into that. And if you're not on VoIP, they can still tune into your phone system. And a lot of people think, well, how do I know they're working? Well, they're working because the phone's being answered. You know they're working because you have to have trust in people and this good mutual relationship. And then the other concern is, well, how do they know my practice? How do they know how to use the EHR? How do they know how to answer a question if someone calls and said their progressive lenses aren't working? What do they do? Well, you need to hire, just like you would internally, a qualified candidate. And so with I Help You, I don't spend, my team, we're vetting candidates mostly from South Africa and Mexico. Nearly 90% of them are opticians, because opticians generally have the most robust skill set and a practice. They know about contacts. They know how to answer questions. They know the lingo, the jargon. Anywhere you are in the world, eye care is the same. It's the left eye and a right eye. I'll jump into the two other roles. The virtual scribe, super simple. If you're on a cloud-based system, they'll access your EHR via browser. If you're on a server system, you're remote in. Team Viewer, there's Amazon, has a cloud HIPAA compliance service. And the only thing that the remote scribe can't do is they can't hand you a pencil or a pen or contact lens trials. And then the last role is data entry. Anything that involves typing. That could be submitting VSP claims, exams, and contact lenses. That could be posting insurance payments. That could be doing physician referrals. If you're a big referral hub, inbound or outbound. If you're doing prior authorizations of RXs. I mean, prior authorizations are the bane of most people's existence. You'll be on hold with Blue Cross for 45 minutes. So huge time savings, but you can also have quality at the same time.
That's, for the listener, just think about what you can outsource, like Perry's talking about. Think about how you can do things differently than they've always been done. Technology has opened a world now that wasn't available to us, 10, 20 years ago. And especially after COVID, we've now seen that so much can be done virtually. And think about what you're saving if you can start to outsource some of these tasks. You're saving, of course, salary. Of course, you need to pay for services, but you're saving salary. You're saving in employment taxes. You're saving in time spent training if you're able to hire someone like Perry's talking about, who is already familiar with eye care, is already familiar with all these tasks and technology and systems and responsibilities. You're saving all these things, potentially having to not buy another computer, not have to worry about another desk area. So you're starting to save in all these different ways if we're able to shift some of these tasks to another company. And so just think about your expenses, what you're doing in your practice. Try to find ways to do it a little bit differently than have always been done.
I like what you said about first space constraints. I just talked to a practice today. They have 5 exam lanes. They outgrew the space. So virtual works perfect for him. He doesn't need to move and disrupt his whole business model. Yeah. His business is fine. So I love the comment, and then the other thing is taxes. I don't know the exact metric, but I'm going to guesstimate an employee got to add about 30% on for taxes. That could be with payroll, 401ks, healthcare. Like those don't exist with remote team members. Yep. And a lot of these, so in South Africa, for instance, they pay for their own healthcare. There's now poor people and old people's different story. I don't know what the rules are for them. And then acquisition cost of new hires is super expensive. Talked to a practice also today. They just paid a recruiter $2,500 for an optician. Wow. $2,500. Well, guess what? One of my team members is $2,600 for the month. It's a whole month of employment you could have had.
And not having to take the time to train them and get them caught up on that learning curve if they're already familiar, like what you're talking about. So yeah, I think that's a great point. Just think differently about how things can be done using technology to your advantage and using services like that. Accounting, you mentioned accounting, Perry. Please, practice owners, get to know an accountant early and often that knows optometry. make sure you're having clean books and having a professional look at that, because that'll save so much time, take a huge burden off your shoulders, and it will be done right. And you'll know you're looking at clean numbers when having to make decisions in your practice. So, and let's talk about marketing. You have a lot to say about how practice owners, people in eye care in general, should be marketing now. And you have a lot to say about building communities, being authentic, creating content. What does the future of eye care marketing look like in your eyes?
Yeah, so I've been currently I'm on the wholesale side, B2B, and that's where I market right now. But I've been in the ECP role of marketing, and that's where I learned marketing. I don't have a marketing degree. A lot of CMOs, chief marketing officers, don't have marketing degrees. They learn. And just like you don't learn dry eye, in school in its entirety, you learn some of the basics and then you learn as you go. So in terms of marketing, I'm going to go through a few faux pas, and some of my thoughts may be considered radical, but I just provide a different perspective, take it or leave it. We're in this industry. We have verticals of services. So we have our website vendors. Okay. We have these 10 companies that kind of dominate, and you pay a fee. They give you a website. They know eye care websites. They'll spin one up in maybe a day, maybe 3 weeks, maybe 6 weeks. Okay. So that's one. We have, our lens verticals, just to give you a similarity. We have our Zeiss, Hoyas, and Essilors. But why go with the herd? Why do that? And so what my dad and I did is how we got into marketing. So he has a 20,000 square foot building, and there was this guy above him, a bariatric surgeon, doing weight loss surgery, gastric sleeve, and then the one where they put the rubber band around your stomach, I believe. We were like, this guy's so freaking busy. I mean, we saw all these people coming in and out of his clinic, and we went to his website. And about 15 years ago, this guy was doing what's called inbound marketing. Today, it's not what I recommend, but we went to his website. It was fabulous. We asked him, how much did you spend? He said, I spent $50K on it. $50K? And this was like in 2005. We're like, dude, this is nuts. And what we learned from him is you got to invest heavy in those resources. And optometry is notorious for spending $0 on marketing, or maybe like 1%, 2%. That's not what businesses should spend on marketing. Maybe, inch your marketing budget up every year, grow to that 5, 8, 10%. It's okay. You're going to have, if you want to grow, you're going to have to put a little risk in there. And so what we did is we went through, oh my gosh, when I was with him, we were still doing YP, Yellow Pages. And that was in 2013. And then we got out of that. We were doing a lot in Google AdWords, which today it's pretty competitive. I'd still highly recommend Google AdWords. Don't go do Google AdWords for special or for routine. Why do routine eye exams? Your local search results will provide that. But specialty services, ortho-K, myopia control, dry eye, IPL, work with an expert on that, of course. And then consider just finding an agency in your area that you can go visit, work with, who can build you a really robust custom website and make it beautiful. And I have seen some really beautiful websites out there. And you may see, Perry, what's my ROI on it? Let me see the stats. Well, guess what? There ain't no stats. And today, we should be measuring qualitative metrics and not all data points. The same thing is with like Instagram. It's like, great, you have 350 likes on your post. What does that get you? I want to see 34 comments is what I want to see. And that's how you know you have engagement. And so it's really important from a marketing perspective, and you can train staff this. A lot of people on their clipboard, when people check in, they fill out an intake form. It says, how did you hear about us? Don't put a checkbox. Don't say, usually it says Google, Yelp, Facebook, and ZocDoc. Leave it blank. Put a line. They're going to say exactly how they heard about you. They're going to say, I saw your ad when I Googled Zydra provider near me, or my Bohemian gland dysfunction near me. And those qualitative findings is how you're actually going to know how to communicate with your audience. So don't get obsessed about your impressions, your click-through rate. That stuff doesn't matter. It's what your patients say, how they found you. So that's number one. Then if you're spending $100 on your website, you're killing yourself, guys. You're really killing yourself. Just at least dish out 500 to, $1,000 a month for just website alone. And pretty is good.
Yeah,
Make it pretty.
I mean, that is your second storefront. Like that's usually the first interaction anyone has with your business is they're gonna go on Google and see where you're at and what you're about. And that website is the first impression.
Totally. And look, go to thumbtack.com and hire a photographer. If you've never had a photo shoot, hire a photographer. It costs you $250, $500. Get the staff all dressed up for the day and just take some nice photos, pop those on your Google My Business page. And that does wonders. It's hard to capture, you look at these, like go to Zillow, you look at these spaces and it's like, they got these drones in these homes and it looks so beautiful and big. That's how we should make our practices look like stage their home to sell.
Interesting.
And the last thing that comes is let's talk about social media, because we all feel like we need to be there because marketing expert told you to do that. And that's really not the truth, because you have to actually develop your own marketing content. You can't pay someone to do it. And if you're paying someone to give you 30 posts a month or 15 posts a month, just cancel the service right now, because no one's going to your Instagram and saying, wow, it's National Hamburger Day, or it's National Color Vision Day, or National Albino Day. You're hurting yourself, and your patients aren't getting any value from that. And it used to be, let the new hiree intern handle the social media. These young kids know what to do. No, get an expert handling social media. Your staff have to get involved, or the doctor. There's so many great doctors today, young and old, killing it.
Yeah.
Killing it for their practices on social media, because their TikTok videos are like about dry eye, but they're also funny.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of doctors doing videos now, YouTube, TikTok, and it is fun, engaging, entertaining. Like it really draws you in. And it gets you to be comfortable with that doctor. You feel like you know that doctor already when you're going in. I mean, listener, if you're doing this content and you're authentic about it and genuine about it, and you're putting yourself out there, the patients seeing that and listening to that and watching you feel like they know how it is to interact with you. They feel like they know already what it's like to experience working with you. And it makes it much more comfortable when they finally do come in to see you, having seen you all these, months or years following you over video or whatever it is.
Yeah. That comfort level is awesome. Yvonne, before this, I've never been face to face with you. I've never, I don't think I've ever seen you on video. I see your name all over Facebook, but so when I came in here, it didn't feel like we were necessarily friends, but we had some, at least name recognition. But imagine you and I were watching each other's videos. That would be fantastic. And that's what people want. By the way, I live in Vermont. I saw Bernie Sanders today and driving in his car. I was like, where's Bernie? For 2 years I lived here. I found
Got
Bernie.
it. Okay.
And this goes back to the comfort level of that facial recognition. I was like, I know Bernie. I've seen him. By the way, Bernie drives a jalopy car. He drives maybe that's just the one he drives around so people think he's all environmental friendly, right?
His public facing car. Yeah. Got it.
So he drives a little red, it might have been a Honda Fit or something, one of those really compact cars. Hilarious.
I got to say, for optometrists listening, check out Perry and the amount of content he puts out, and you'll see what it looks like to create genuine content that's engaging, entertaining. There's your peers are creating YouTube videos as well. Head on YouTube, see what's going on, and you'll find great examples of what that looks like to create fun videos, because it does long-term help your practice, and people are looking for that. People are looking not only to be informed and to get information, but to be entertained a little bit too, and get to know you as a person, as an individual. Anything else to add there, Perry, on the marketing side?
Yeah, just one final thought. I want to offer everybody here, I just started something called office hours for myself. Back 2 years ago, I was consulting one-on-one with doctors. I didn't enjoy it though. I felt like the profit motive was not interesting to me to do that. And I'd rather give advice and just talk to people like friends, just like, hey, I want to start social media, but Perry, how do I do captions? I see everyone has these captions, and I've been through those same situations of like, what are the tech tools to make this more efficient? And like, I've got a science to it and a framework to get this content out, which is kind of the hardest part. It's a different muscle. And, Instagram has captioning, like it can detect the audio and transcribe it for you. So there's like so many tools out there. We could probably put that link in there. So feel free to reach out. And really the trick is, don't become, for social media, everybody starts with 0 followers, 0. So you're not alone, and it's going to take you 3 years to develop a following. So you got to be patient, and you got to keep going and reiterating and getting better and better and better.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think that's a good place to leave it. Where can people find you, Perry, if they want to follow you, start a conversation with you, get to know what you're doing right now? Where can they find you?
Sure. They can just, my handle is at Entrepreneur, and I'll spell it for you. It's EYETREPRENEUR. It's a terrible business name because it's hard to spell. And you can also check me out at ihelpyou.co, EYEHELP YOU.co, and you can learn about all the remote services I provide. But my Facebook group's really where the magic happens, and you'll kind of see different perspectives. We're heavy on practice management in that group, and optical, and really just culture within offices. And you can learn a lot of sourcing too, cost of goods reduction. There's a lot of people in there who are just like brutal and honest, but respectful at the same time. So it's a great
group. A lot of engagement in that group. So definitely check that out. Check Perry out wherever he's at. He's all over the internet. And with that, Perry, really appreciate you coming on. It has been awesome to have you. Hopefully I'll be able to twist your arm and convince you to come on again soon. I'm sure there's a lot more we can talk about, but really appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you, Evon. Take care.
All right. Take care. And with that, we'll see you next time. Take care.
Want more resources to help master your money? Check out the Education Hub on Evon's website at optometrywealth.com. Evon Mendrin is a certified financial planner and owner of Optometry Wealth Advisors, a California registered investment advisor. All opinions of Evon and his guests are their own. This show is for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for specific investment, legal, tax, or other decisions. Clients of OWA may own securities mentioned on this show.